always keeping my fingers crossed that the live stream picks up. And right now, Scott, I'm watching on LinkedIn to make sure that it's picking up, and it's not picking up yet. So I'm
Oh,
going to invite our audience, if anyone is watching this live, in comments, right? Okay, it looks like the live's picking up. And there's about a 20 to 30-second delay that happens with these videos. So that's why I rely on our audience. So if you're watching right now, could you do me a favor? Do me a solid, if you will. Drop a comment below and say, hi, yes, it's on. Yes, it's working. Because I always get just a little bit of panic at the beginning of
never
these videos
know.
that we're going to be talking and it's coming up. At any rate, good morning, Scott. How are you
Good
doing today?
morning. Good, Brenda. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. It's great to see you. It's been a bit since we've seen each other in person,
Hmm.
but I'm delighted to have the chance to chat with you today. And I want to welcome our audience, whether you're watching this live or in playback, or maybe you're listening to the podcast months from now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today's session, we're going to be talking about personal branding sessions, silly faces, outtakes, and props. Oh my. And I call this show Enthusiastically Self-Employed. I've designed it for individuals who are self-employed, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, business owners, etc. And I try to bring on a variety of people from a variety of different backgrounds. And I'll be honest with you, I bring on people where I want to learn from them, from their topics, or that I've done business with them and I've learned from them personally. And Scott is one of those people. By the way, I see the comments coming in. Thank you,
Perfect.
Paul.
Great.
You got me. I
Yep.
really do appreciate that. And Simon, we're all the way over the pond in London, is watching us too. So, Simon, thank you so much for watching. So, back to Scott. Now, Scott, you and I met originally through the Troy Chamber, and I discovered you were a headshot photographer. I think at the time you had moved to Detroit from, was it Chicago? Am I
Yeah.
remembering correctly? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
And we met back at I want to say it was like Einstein Bagels. Does that sound right to you? Like back or
Could,
Starbucks or something?
could
One of
be
those
one of
places.
those. Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely before COVID. Probably had just
Before
moved. So
COVID, in
probably 18,
person.
19. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and at the time we decided we were going to help each other. So I gave you some tips on your LinkedIn profile. You booked me for a headshot photo session. And now I come back to you about once every other year. Full disclosure, the photo I have on my account right now is not Scott's. I always feel a little guilty when I use somebody
Oh,
else's, but I was at a conference in October and they had hired a headshot photographer for all of the attendees. And they just gave us like the raw photos without any retouching or anything. But I always encourage people, any chance you have to get a new headshot photo and update it on your account to do it. So I think I even messaged you before and I said, Scott, I'm letting you know it's like I almost felt like I was cheating on you. Like I'm using someone else's photo, but it's just temporary. Just but at any rate, Scott does really amazing work. And I have done some personal branding sessions with him as well. So before we jump into our conversation though, Scott, why don't you tell us a bit about you and about your business? What do you do?
so I've been a headshot photographer for almost 10 years full time. I had a corporate background prior to that. I was actually in the insurance industry. So just a little bit of a change of gears. Uh,
Bit, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that actually set me up pretty well for the headshot market. So I found that just having that corporate background is not something, especially being a solopreneur, if you haven't come from a corporate world, it's a little bit different. Just a different environment. So I found that background still helps me today. Um, I got to Detroit via Chicago, where I started my business. Was there for a couple of years, and then we moved here, and we've been here for 7 years, I think 6, 7 years.
Okay.
It's going by fast, and I pretty much specialize in corporate headshot photography and personal branding. Um, so I don't do weddings. I don't do families, only on very rare occasions. I'll do a little bit of like high school senior portraits,
Mhm.
but I stick to mostly studio stuff. I'm not running around outside for definitely not for headshots. Um, and yeah, that's I found that sticking to the niche of headshots has
Mhm.
served me well. I like to say, or I'm starting to say now, that I was doing headshots before they were cool, because
Right?
it seems like you look around and everybody's a headshot photographer. So
Mm.
I feel like I've got a pretty good start on everybody. And I would say that my specialty is really taking somebody that's not used to being on camera or being comfortable being on camera,
Mhm.
uh, and helping them feel comfortable and relaxed in a pretty short time, and getting them an image that they're proud to use.
That's awesome. And that's a really good point too, Scott, because and I send people to you all the time because people come to me for LinkedIn profile optimization. Like they want their profile to look more
Hmm.
like them and reflect who they are. And then we look at their headshot photo, and I always kind of approach this very gingerly. And I'll say to them, how long has it been? Or usually I say your headshot photo should be no more than 5 years old, taken from a professional headshot photographer. And I want everyone to think about this as I'm saying this. Like 5 years ago was 2018. It's almost 2019 at this point. Like that was 5 years ago. And I think, even, especially with the pandemic, it's almost like we went into this time freeze. Like we don't really think about all the years that have passed. And we one day look up, and I'm going to show Martin's comment on the screen right now because I think this is a really good point. Martin, there's a lot of people, realtors, he's saying in his experience, have a 20-year-old profile photo. And there's so many times that this happened to me, Scott, and I'm sure you as well, where you run into somebody at an event and you do a lot of networking. I know you're super
Hmm.
active through the Troy Chamber. And I know that when you go up to people at the event, you're like, Simon, and I'm not picking on you, Simon from London, but the name was on my mind. Simon, because you're like, you look at their headshot photo and it's like a younger version, like a younger
Yeah.
version of the person. And then it's a little bit jarring. So I always send them to you, and I always tell people, he'll make you really comfortable. He takes you through a variety of different shots and poses, and they will always have questions about, what should I wear and things. And I'm like, I know he's got a YouTube library and he's got some great
Yep.
resources.
Yep. Yep.
But but today we're shifting gears from the traditional headshot photo, and what we're going to be talking about is personal branding. So talk to us, I guess, first, Scott, about what is a personal branding session and how is it different than like a headshot session?
So for a headshot session, I would consider that more, pretty simple in and out. I do a lot of those I work with a lot of law firms, a lot of sales teams, executives, that sort of thing. So I'll work with somebody for 5 or 10 minutes, and maybe a group of 20 or 30 people, or even more. Um, or I have people come into my studio as kind of an ongoing basis. So if a law firm hires a new attorney, they send them over and we do a quick headshot, and they're in and out and back on their way. That's a
Mhm.
pretty good corporate model. It's kind of it's no frills, but I found that, most people don't want to spend an hour and a half in the studio. They want to just
Sure.
get in and out and get on with their day. So when you move to kind of that personal branding space, though, that's when you're talking about spending an hour or so in the studio, and you're doing more than your LinkedIn photo. So it's at least maybe a couple of outfit changes. We're going to change up the lighting, maybe do some different backgrounds, really give you an opportunity to have some different looks. And the thing I'm trying to remind people more and more of is that you're really building a content library,
Mhm.
with your own headshots or portraits. Um, and so that's something you need to think about, is that and then when people go back to pick their pictures, and you see this with headshots too, is it's people get fixated on, oh, I like this pose, or I like to be standing like this, looking to the camera from this angle, or whatever. And you have to kind of get over that hump of, it's not always about your absolute most favorite picture. It's kind of what works for your use case.
Mhm.
So we are built as solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. We're in the same boat. Our picture is our brand. I mean, that's who people are paying to work with.
Mhm.
And you need different images for different purposes. So whether that's different social media platforms, different print uses, presentations, podcasts, you name it, we need different pictures. And so that's really kind of the marketing goal.
Mhm.
And then that takes you from, one image to multiple images. And it may not be 10 or 20, but even just a handful,
Mhm.
really can set you up, and you can use those for all sorts of things, as you know, as you do a great job of showing everybody.
Yeah,
So
I love it,
that's
and I've
yeah.
done a couple of these personal branding sessions, and I always appreciate, you'll periodically reach out to me and you'll say, is it time to get another session in? Because you see how I'm using the photos too, and for those people that follow me online, I'm mainly on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever they're calling it these days. I'm on Threads, I'm on YouTube, so I try to blend in some of the photos that Scott has taken of me, and I do these really expressive, like, crazy
Mhm.
smiling photos and sometimes the
Yep.
perplexed photos, and the great thing is I think especially even on Instagram nowadays, we're using these photos to set the mood for whatever the caption is for the photo, so it's not always corporate headshot photo Brenda.
Right.
Sometimes it's more expressive, like, crazy Brenda, or things that fit the mood, and I would imagine, Scott, that when you're working with people, when you first did the first one with me, I was probably just a little bit nervous. Now
Mhm.
you bring me out and I go, like, all out, and you're like,
Right.
"Okay, let's try this and let's try and I'm pretty comfortable doing it, but talk to us about the first time you're doing a personal branding session with someone. Does it feel awkward for people, or are people, like, just really comfortable and get into them? Talk to us about that.
Most people are a little uncomfortable with the idea, and it takes some warming up.
Yeah.
And that's part of, I mean, that's part of, I think, what I would say is a benefit to working with a photographer, is that they're gonna, we're gonna help you kind of get over that hump of being a little camera shy.
Mhm,
And if, I would say that's really what you're shopping for when you're shopping for a photographer.
mhm.
If if that's not happening, I would say keep shopping.
Yeah,
Um, because with all the other technologies, there's a lot that can be done elsewhere, but that interaction of just kind of getting, meeting people where they're at, and kind of helping them over the hill, to build comfort, is so key. And I find that once you get going, people start to warm up, and then sometimes they're really amazed and they're really excited, with the results, that, like, they just can't believe what we got to in the span of an hour, and that's really
yeah.
exciting. That's probably one of the most rewarding pieces of it. um
I wanna share, if you don't mind,
yeah.
Scott, 'cause as we're talking about this, I feel like sometimes we need to visualize, like, what
Hmm.
what what are we talking about? And, in our pre-show, Scott and I were talking about, I'm like, "Can we show any photos on screen? Do you have any web
Hmm.
page or a library?" And you said, "Yeah, I've got under my," and I think it's under, is it under portfolio on your website?
Yep.
You've got a link, literally, it's called Quirky Headshots.
Yep.
And talk to me about, or tell us a little bit about some of the photos that were captured here on screen. Like, how do you get people? Like, there's a woman who's doing the fingers on the
Yep.
eyes, and like, tell us about, like, how did you get these photos? Are these prompted? Are these natural? What do you tell people to get these?
So there's a lot of little prompting tricks that I use. I can't share all the secrets. You have to come, everybody has to come book a session, but
Right, that's right.
right. Um, but it's a lot of, just a lot of one-liners, that get people, it kind of takes that nervous energy, and then you can start to use it.
Mhm.
Um, I'll have people talk about, their jobs, their clients, maybe their bosses, think about their last meetings that they were at.
Yeah.
And it's funny because sometimes people come in expecting like a stand-up comedy routine, and I am not a
And you're pretty,
yeah,
actually, you're very approachable, you're very down to earth. You're not like, um in a good way, you're not over the top. Like, to
yeah.
me, you've always made me feel very comfortable, very conversational. And it's really just you and Scott working in the studio, unless you've hired, somebody to do your hair and makeup, or if
Mhm.
you have an assistant working with you that day, Scott. But it's pretty much you and the other person.
Right.
And you're just having this conversation. And I mean, I remember the first couple times I did these, I was like really nervous in the beginning, and by the end, I'm, like, suggesting poses. I'm like, "How about we try
Oh,
this?
yeah.
How about we try
Yeah,
that?"
yeah,
Right?
yeah, and then as you start, using these, I mean, and you've gone,
Mhm.
you've seen the process, but you start to see, "Oh, I can use this for that and that," and and the other thing people realize too is, I try to encourage them, like, post this on Facebook or
Yeah.
Instagram, and you'll be amazed at the comments that are generated. And
Mm.
those are always the most, commented photos, especially if it's somebody that's not normally posting those kinds of images.
Right.
So it's really a good way to kind of light up your social media too, if you need a little boost. Uh,
Yeah.
and then it really builds, it starts to build, like, it's a process of building that on-camera presence, because then,
Mhm.
as a small business owner or solopreneur, that comfort level of being on camera is so important. Like, you just have to kind of, and I would say most people in life, and I'm even trying to encourage my kids,
Mhm.
in school, is like, you've just got to be comfortable being on camera. It doesn't have to be your favorite thing to do,
Yeah.
but building that comfort level to say, okay, yeah, I can stand up here and you can take a few pictures of me, or we can do a quick video, and you're good with it. You don't freak out. Um, because and I've noticed this with, sometimes CEOs or, executives, they have
Yeah.
this, like, media presence that they've developed, and not everybody has it, but some of them do have this ability to kind of turn it on, and they do their little PR stint, and then, then they're good, and then they're back into their day job.
Right.
And that's a really important skill for everybody to develop. And I think these little sessions are a great way to do that, because it kind of gets you out of your shell enough, kind of stretches you, and then it just helps you realize that, yeah, it's not the it doesn't, you don't have to be nervous about it.
Yeah.
You can do it. Everybody can do it. It's a place you can get to.
And you work with a variety of people. I mean, you were just talking about CEOs, and my show
Mhm.
is really targeted more towards people who are self-employed. And I want to remind
Yeah.
everybody, when you're self-employed, you can make your own rules.
Yep.
And I'm speaking to the people who are just leaving corporate, because I remember those days when I was just leaving corporate and I would go out to networking events. I would wear my suits, my corporate suits,
Hmm.
because that was my apparel, my attire. When I did headshot photo sessions, I did one, I think not too long after I really got into being self-employed, and I did one pretty early on with you, but I changed my attire and I went more from suits to like colorful blouses and in different fun type of apparel.
Right.
And then I realized, I can do anything I want. I can make a logo that is magenta pink. I don't have
Hmm.
to use a standard corporate blue or,
Hmm.
those colors. And when you do photos of yourself on social media, they don't always have to be just your stiff corporate headshot
Right.
photos. And I think when you're self-employed, you can give yourself that freedom. Whereas if you're in a corporate role and you're one of the leadership team members, part of a company, you have to follow the personality of the company. Would you agree with that, Scott?
Yes, and I would mention, though, we're all CEOs of our own company, so there's
Yeah.
still that parallel.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think, you do have a lot more freedom to do pretty much whatever you want. And everybody's got their comfort level, and it takes a while to sometimes warm up if you are coming from that corporate background where there are a lot of rules to follow, and you're always thinking about what you should or shouldn't do, or what is or isn't going to be approved.
Mhm.
Um, I get a lot of corporate people that have tattoos on their arms, and that's
Sure.
always
Mhm.
concerned about that. Um, so yeah, you get to that point. Lost my train of thought, though, what I was saying.
That's okay. And I think it's
No
just,
point here.
when you're a corporate employee, I think you have to fit the mold of what the leadership team
Yeah.
looks like. Sometimes you can be bold and step outside of it a bit, but I guess for those people who are self-employed, we can do more of these outtakes, these personality shots, these um I've even got a collection of like coffee mugs, and I think when I brought some of them out to you, and I've had them, me holding the
Yeah.
coffee mugs. I've got my Girl Boss mug in there, and I've got my pie tin. Actually, now that I mention it, I got to hold up, copy my book.
Yeah. Right.
I brought my pie tin with me for the
Mhm.
photo shoot. You have to pick up a copy of Social Media Pie to see that photo
Mhm.
in action there. But
Yeah.
giving ourselves permission. So I want to speak to those people out that are listening, either live or playback or in the podcast, that are just getting started. I want to let you know you can give yourself permission to have fun in your
That's
photos, to show some of your personality,
right.
whether you want to be a little bit more serious and quirky, or have some personality and some fun.
And I also
Um,
think it'll help
yeah.
build I think it'll help you find the personality of your business, and
Yes.
almost
Yes.
your marketing vibe, for lack of a better word.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, because when you kind of let go to an extent, it starts to guide, how
Yeah.
you structure your social profiles, what you post, kind of what you show. And then,
Mhm.
also it's great for, I've been doing a lot of self portraits of myself for my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and it's just like what you're doing. You just crank them out, and it's just every expression you can think of, and then
Well, and to
never
your
know.
point, for the YouTube channel, it's not just the video, it's the still photo that sits on the cover image of the YouTube. So as you're
Right.
sharing that, and you do a really great job with this too, Scott, you will send out your YouTube video clips in an email newsletter, and then you'll also merchandise them on social. But it's so important to have a compelling, interesting still photo for the
Hmm.
thumbnail, because as people are coming up, as your videos are coming up in search results, people are going to click on the video that looks interesting and compelling.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
people pay attention to those fun, expressive photos, or even just the
Yep.
serious but posed photos,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yeah. And there's a whole science behind the YouTube thumbnail
Yeah.
development. I mean, I don't get that far into it, but yeah, people spend a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
You're
doesn't
pretty good
take
on
much.
YouTube, though, I have to say. I've followed in your footsteps, and I admire the work that you're doing, and I've seen your presence growing, and I've watched your videos, evolve too. I think you're really doing a nice job. So, little plug for Scott. I'll drop his YouTube link into the chat if you guys
Thanks.
wanna see that. What I'd like to do now, though, Scott, is change gears, and we're gonna bring our audience into the conversation. So, I'll invite our audience, if you're watching this live, whether you're on, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, if you drop a comment, I can bring your comments up on screen. And I do see a few comments that have come in here. And here's one from Sue Griffey. Sue is in, I believe, the Washington, D.C. area, Scott, but she says she's learned a lot. She's got a stack of faces and poses and tools that she uses in mentoring. And of course, lots of poses with pom poms. And that's one of her props. She's a mentor with pom poms, and she uses
Hmm.
that. I would imagine that you work with people like Sue as well, who are executive coaches, or people like, I'm a little bit more out there. I'm a marketer. I'm a bit more, I don't want to say crazy with some of the poses I do, but I think you can be corporate and still be expressive with your personal branding sessions too. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you can you can still have excuse me, you can still have the excuse, hold on.
That's okay. And while
Ooh.
we're waiting for that, I always let my guests,
There we go.
you got a frog in the morning?
Choked up.
We'll pull up a comment. Hey, Andrew.
Choked
Hey,
up.
superstar Andrew's watching us today too.
But yeah, you can bring your personality to the corporate images as well, and there's no reason you can't. I mean, yeah, I'd say the more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan was commenting on my lighting, which I was adjusting just before the show, and I even told Scott this. I'm like, whenever I feel like I'm with somebody who's an expert in cameras and videos and lighting, and Scott's his core service is photography, but you also do video. So when I came on camera today, I was like, oh, I gotta make sure I look good, because I don't want Scott to be disappointed in my lighting or.
Yeah, it's funny. The one thing I never really dialed in a Zoom setup, because after the pandemic, or once I could start doing sessions again, I got back in and I was actually quite busy, so I didn't have time to really develop a video setup. But I
Yeah,
have my little YouTube setup, and that really is all about using a fancy lens to get a nice soft background that blurs all my clutter out in the background,
yeah,
and a little bit of lighting. But yeah,
yeah.
but it works.
And Dan says he loves your studio, Scott. He needs to get Dan's saying he needs to get some
Thanks,
soft lights
Dan.
in the background. And I see that what you have behind you. I mean, I think I've actually taken photos against that blank wall that's behind you. If I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, that's like the back windows are facing the back parking lot by you, and that's the wall that we do the
Yep.
photos against right behind you over
Yeah,
there, right?
the wall behind the mirror there, that's kind of where we do a lot of the stuff. And yeah, people are sometimes
Yeah.
surprised that, you can do a lot with a wall. And these days yeah, I know you do a lot of this in Canva, where you're cutting your background out
Yeah.
anyway. So that's even better, just to have a simple neutral background. It's kind of like doing a green screen, but technically sometimes it's a little easier because you don't have to worry about the green screen reflections.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, the wall. So don't underestimate a nice, simple, neutral colored wall, because you can
Yeah.
do a lot with it.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because sometimes when I refer clients over to you to get a new headshot, it's because they have the really dated looking photos. And I try to, gently remind them that technology changes, and even styles of backgrounds change. And
Mhm.
it's usually the people that I refer over to you, Scott, have the older backgrounds, which are either the blue with like white that looks like clouds in the
Yeah,
background,
yeah.
or the tan darker tones and the tan lighter tones. And it's dated, and it's and I love that you use the lighter background, and you've even done techniques. I've done these shoots with you as well, where you have like a lighting kit that you're reflecting on the wall, so you can make a colored background on that white, lighter colored wall, right?
Yeah, the nice thing about like a plain white wall is you can technically make it dark or light. I mean, you can do all sorts of things with it.
Hmm.
So that's why I mean, I do have some backdrops on the other side of the wall here,
Yeah.
but people do, they ask a lot about backgrounds. It's maybe not as much anymore, but it used to be people were more concerned. I mean, I felt like they're more concerned about the background, and the background is relevant, but I mean, for a headshot or portrait or, most personal branding related type images, it's about you. Like the background should not overpower anything. If
Right.
it does, there's just too much. Because if
Yeah.
it's taking the attention off you, then it's not a personal branding image.
That's a good point. And
Right.
you've even reminded me too, like I remember some of our earlier headshot sessions, and I think this was when your studio was in Rochester, and
Hmm.
I brought out a couple different outfits, and I had jewelry. I had, statement necklaces,
Hmm.
and that I was gonna wear as a part of my shoot. And you were very, very diplomatic about it, but you're like, why don't we try a few without?
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you did, because then the focal point would have been on the necklace, the statement necklace, and not on me and my face. And we were able to do a lot with those photos that I didn't even think about it. I think even that day I had stopped by Starbucks in the morning, and I had my Starbucks, and you even
Yep.
got a couple of photos of me drinking my Starbucks, which I still use to this day.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
that
Yep.
personality element.
Yeah, the props and so the jewelry is one. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an easy way to date an image. I find almost more so than clothing or background. I mean, that can and it just is distracting by design. And then the props are interesting. I mean, you touched on that, and that's I think worth mentioning for personal branding
Yeah.
type uses is that functionally they serve a nice little benefit in that it gives you something to do with your hands because
Yeah.
um,
It's
you know
awkward.
right. Nobody, I mean, everybody asks, what do I do with my hands? And that's, for anything that's
Yeah.
like even like a chest up picture that people are still asking, what do I do with my hands? And if you have a phone or a mug or, I've had doctors bring stethoscopes, any little prop that you use day to day is nice because you're used to holding it and you kind of have, um, you have a way of manipulating with your hands. So it gives you something to do, but you're not thinking about it. And it really adds a lot to the session.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of, for people who are parents, you'll relate to this. If you're a parent, you know how to hold a baby.
Yeah.
If you've never been a parent and you're visiting your niece or your nephew or your brothers, and they hand you the baby, you're like, how do I hold its head? And,
Right. Yep.
you don't
Yep.
want to, but I'm gonna talk to those folks like me who are, working with social media. You've got your hand in your phone a lot, and I've done a couple of these
Yeah.
in your sessions where you're like, hold your phone in front of you and look at
Mhm.
it and point at it,
Yep.
and
Yep.
or grab. I don't have a let me see if I do have a coffee mug. Grab your coffee mug. Bring one of your
Yep.
favorite. This is from Amy Porterfield's program, by the way.
Mhm.
Grab a coffee mug, and even if there's nothing in it, pretend like you're sipping a cup of
Yeah.
coffee, or
Sure.
hold it in front of your. I mean, you've done a really great job of that. But I love that you touch on using the props that you use as a part of your business. So, and you talked about doctors bringing stethoscopes, and I would think people who are self-employed, you probably do the same thing that you did with me. And I don't want to give too much away, but when we were talking about booking our personal branding session, you asked me some questions, how I'm going to use it. What are the types of props that I think I might bring? No surprise
Mhm.
to anybody who knows me. I said, maybe I'll bring some pie, but I don't know, because I don't know how food photographs. And I think I said, no, I don't want to do that. And you're just like, yeah, let's not do real food on camera.
Yeah.
Let's do inanimate objects instead. But I think a good photographer like Scott can help to draw that out of you. So if you're thinking about doing one of these personal branding sessions, highly, highly recommend it. And I think what you had mentioned, Scott, too, is that you can incorporate some headshot photos as a part of the session as well. So we can
Mhm.
we can knock both of these out, right?
Yeah, so it's real easy to do. We do some headshots, and then we branch off. And I find the headshots are a good warm up too. It gets people a little more comfortable, um, starts to kind of calm the nerves a little bit, and people realize, oh, I can do this, and then we start to branch out. We'll try some different outfits, and then we'll try different lighting setups, and start to do, whether they, maybe they're 3/4, or sometimes I'll do full length images even. It's funny. People think they want full length sometimes, but then they realize it's harder to do than people realize.
Yeah.
So we will try to err towards like a 3/4. And I find for most social media uses, you don't generally need to show your feet, because it's just the format doesn't work. So you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about your shoes.
That's a
It's
good
usually
point.
what I tell people. Yeah. You do want
Yeah.
to worry about your pants, though. I've had some challenges with that recently. I did a little AI test where I had Photoshop try to generate some pants on a client that was supposed to have a suit head to toe, and he only had his shirt and jacket.
Okay.
And so I wanted to see if that was going to work, as if we could save the project. So I said, well, let's take a shot and we'll see what we can do, and see if AI can add pants. And it did not go well.
We want to Photoshop pants in later because
Yes.
doesn't quite work.
Yes, yes.
You
And
know?
that, you'd be surprised how often it happens, because you get, people are still on kind of the Zoom mentality,
Yeah,
where, you're
that's
doing
true.
meetings and it's just chest up.
Yeah.
And so and then they think too, oh, it's just a headshot, which, yeah, but, depending on your, especially for a bigger company, you may need different spec images, and sometimes, and I would say this applies to everybody regardless of what
Yeah,
you
just
do, yeah, if
yeah,
you're
just wear the pants, wear the bottom half too,
wear the
right?
pants, yeah. And it's good to shoot with a little extra room, because you can always crop in. It's a little harder to make space. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you can get lucky with AI there, but again, it's always always better to show the pants, and then we can crop in, because that gives you a lot more flexibility in layout for all sorts of social uses.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is you're thinking about these things so that we don't have to, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you're bringing all this
Yep.
in because you know what happens after the photo session when people reach back out to you. They say, "Do you have an image that has more background? Do you have a wider
Right.
image, a taller image? Do you have one that's showing just a little bit more of me?" And you're like, "Well, we didn't get that because you were wearing shorts and not
Right.
your suit dress or your suit skirt that day." So,
Yeah.
I wanna be respectful of your time, Scott. I know you said you've got a client coming in for a session in a little bit. Scott's a busy guy. So, what I want to do is I wanna show your LinkedIn URL up on screen right now. And, are you open to connecting with people on LinkedIn, Scott? Tell us
I
about it.
am. I am not super active, as Brenda would probably know from LinkedIn,
Don't tell
unfortunately.
people that.
So I am active on
You're
LinkedIn. I just,
active. You're as active as you can be because
I,
you have a
that's,
thriving, busy business.
yes,
How's
that's
that?
a good way to say it. I am juggling a lot of social media platforms, and I make
Yeah.
sure I post, video updates and that sort of thing. But I would like to follow more, especially in the last couple of years. I've, made some great relationships with clients, and, just kind of keeping better tabs on them, would be, I think, beneficial. But yeah, there's my profile. It's pretty solid. It's holding up. I think I do need to update that headshot, because I have a lot of more recent ones that it's probably time
Yeah.
for a new one there.
Isn't it funny? It's like the what do they say? The cobbler making the children's shoes. I can't think of the
Right,
analogy here, but it's
right.
the same thing. It's like as even for me, from time to time, I'll do like a once over on my LinkedIn profile, and I realize I have something that I don't do anymore. Like I have a
Yep.
service listed in my about statement, but I try to refreshen mine up periodically. And as a photographer, you're always behind the camera. You're not in front of the camera. Getting your headshot
Most
photo
of the time, yeah.
captured.
Yep.
But, I wanna encourage you if you're watching this, whether you're watching live playback or the podcast, if you invite Scott to connect, just mention that you heard him on the video with Brenda about the personal branding sessions, and I know he'll be happy to accept your invitation. And then Scott, also, I'm gonna go back to your website here and remind us if people are interested in doing business with you. Now, today we were talking about personal branding, but I know that you have
Mhm.
a variety of different offerings and services available. So remind us if you could, what are the things that you do as a photographer? What are the services that you offer?
So the primary services are really, individual studio headshots. So you can make appointments through my website. Said we're both in Detroit. I'm in Troy specifically. So you can make an appointment through the website, and then I also work on location for organizations. So if you
Yeah.
know somebody that's got an organization of, whether it's half a dozen to 100 people or more, even, that's something we
Mhm.
can do as well. Um, I also do event headshots too. So if you're going to a conference, again, kind of like what you talked about, where it's a conference, trade show, that sort of thing, and
Mhm.
oftentimes we'll have headshot photographers on site. That's a challenging environment to work in, and the expectations are high, but it's pretty tricky. But I will say I'm pretty good at it, and so I'm trying to do a little bit more.
Mhm.
So that's a great way, even if it could be a client appreciation type of thing. There's also a lot of like marketing, branding type of things you can do within those to get sponsors and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I do a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of high school portraiture, seniors. I do some sports team stuff too, as well. That's kind of my hobby, if you will. My daughter's on a couple of dance teams, and so I've been doing some team banners.
You get roped in for that because you're
Yeah,
the
it's a
dad
lot
of
of
the dancing kid, right?
it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. It's a lot of fun. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are the main things. And I would say, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah.
Um,
And just a great selection. I love that you've got this gallery on your homepage. For those people that
mhm.
are watching on video right now, you can see these photos that are rotating through. And some people are against just the clean white wall. Other people, and I love there was a woman a little while ago. I don't know if she'll come back up. She's wearing a purple blouse and you've got purple light. And it just looks amazing. Like the lighting and the
Yep.
coloring and everything look really great. But you do such a nice job with your photography and you do a broad selection of individuals, not just personal branding but also headshot photos. So if you're interested in learning more, go to scottlawrencephoto.com. We'll put the link in the show notes for those of you who might be interested in that. And Scott, as we start to wrap up our conversation today, I just want to give you any final comments for us, for those people that are thinking about personal branding sessions for themselves.
Well, I would say it's a great experience, regardless of your profession. It looks like we had a comment about personal branding for individuals who are not
Yeah,
business
I
owners.
saw that one coming in. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
end with maybe answering Doris's
Yeah.
question. Hey, Doris,
I,
thanks for watching.
yeah. Thanks, Doris. I think that's so I think it's a great experience. I think and this goes back to kind of just the classics of photography, is it's a good experience just to be photographed. And
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to exist in pictures that are a little bit beyond a cell phone, even though those are great pictures and they still, stand on their own. Um, it's just an experience that is hard to replicate through a phone. And that process, as we talked about, can start to build camera presence, which can help you in a lot of other things. And having good images of yourself, there's no reason, that's a good reason in of itself. So
Yeah.
I would say, don't be shy or embarrassed about wanting to get some good pictures of yourself. Goes a long way. And then as you're branching out for business, for your business, if you are a business owner, I would definitely encourage you to try lightening it up a little bit. I think you'll be surprised at how much personality you can bring to your images, and then I think that's helps set the stage for some of your marketing initiatives going forward.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and then do check out my definitely check out the YouTube channel. I know you mentioned that before, but I have a lot of good tips there as well, for people and my clients love this. I send them some video recommendations when they book a session. There are a lot of tips on just basically how to be a model for non-models, is kind of the way I would put it.
Yeah.
It helps you think about what to wear, what not to wear. I've even got a video on how to smile. So those tips are pretty valuable regardless of, you know,
Mhm.
where you are in your career. Again, it's just a lot of good camera presence
Yeah.
tips.
Absolutely. And just to add on to the question from Doris was how can you say a thing or two about personal branding for individuals who are not business owners or entrepreneur? Doris, I just want to give a personal plug out to all of you out there who are employees of companies thinking about personal branding. And you might say, well, I don't really have a personal brand because I'm an employee of a company. Yes, you do. And I think it's so important that we're always thinking about growing and managing our personal brands online because you never know where the future will lead. And sometimes we can create a presence for ourselves that could open doors to other opportunities. And that might be
Yep.
in other employment opportunities and other organizations that are maybe a better fit. Or if for whatever reason your employment ends with your previous company, it keeps you visible on the platform. And honestly, I never was planning to be self-employed, but I had built up such a strong personal brand for myself that I was able to pivot into it quickly. And then I work with Scott, to help to polish off my looks online. So just a little bit of a plug for that. So Scott, this has been such a delight chatting with you today. We were supposed to do my personal branding session like a week and a half ago. I had to cancel because I had some client engagements come up. So I think we're going to be reaching out in January and getting that scheduled, but I'm really
Sounds
looking
good.
forward to it. And I just want to thank you again for being on today, Scott.
Thanks again for having me.
Well, it's been a pleasure. All right, guys. And for those of you who are watching, if you enjoyed watching the video, we would love it if you could drop a comment below. Scott and I are self-employed, so we do not get performance reviews anymore. So our performance reviews come in form of the comments from you. So if you enjoyed the tips that you got from us today, if you're following Scott, if you work with Scott, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. And then as soon as this video is done playing on LinkedIn, if you're watching it here, there'll be a little share icon at the bottom. If you could go ahead and click on share and share it as a LinkedIn post today. When you do so, tag Scott and myself, use the @ sign to tag us in on that. When you do so, maybe share something that you learn or tell people why they should watch the video. Scott and I will be sure to comment back to you. And this is a really great technique, by the way, if you haven't posted on LinkedIn in a while, like maybe not at all yet this month, this year even, and we're getting into December, it's a really great technique. With that said, we look forward to seeing you all on LinkedIn. And Scott, I'm hoping to make it out to a Troy Chamber event soon to see you in person, and then we'll do that photo session sometime in the new year.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right,
Thanks,
guys,
Brenda.
stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Remember, I'm here through end of the year, just before the holidays. We'll be doing these shows every Tuesday at 9:05 a.m. Moving into 2024, I'm staying on Tuesdays, but we'll be at 12:05 p.m. Eastern time. So make a note on your calendar, and we will see all of you on LinkedIn. Take care.